Hello, my friends. How are you doing? I'm Jake Carter. Welcome to Daily English Practice. First of all, make sure to subscribe to the channel so our community of English learners can grow and evolve. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Make the most of it.
The day I missed my flight and ended up in the best place ever. Have you ever had one of those mornings where everything seems under control until suddenly it's not? Let me take you back to a cold Tuesday morning in Melbourne. I had a flight to Sydney scheduled for 9:30 a.m. It wasn't just a random trip. I had planned this for weeks. I was going to visit an old friend and attend a meeting that could have meant a big step forward in my career. You know, those meetings that make you a bit nervous but excited too? That was one of them. I had everything sorted out the night before. Bag packed, alarm set, documents printed, boarding pass saved on my phone, even a light breakfast prepared in the fridge. I thought I was being responsible. I thought nothing could go wrong. Well, life had other plans. I remember waking up and immediately knowing something was off. You know that strange feeling when the room feels too bright for the time it's supposed to be? I turned my head to look at the clock, 8:45 a.m. My heart sank. My flight was at 9:30. The airport was about 40 minutes away. Even in perfect traffic, I wasn't going to make it. But that didn't stop me from trying. I flew out of bed like a rocket. No shower, no breakfast. I barely even remembered to put on socks. I grabbed my backpack and ran outside. My Uber app wouldn't load, so I jumped into my car and took off. Now, let me tell you something about Melbourne traffic. It's either your best friend or your worst enemy. That day, it was a complete nightmare. Every light turned red, every lane I chose moved slower than the others. And to make it worse, I had this playlist running in the background with calm, peaceful acoustic music. The irony was almost funny. By the time I reached the airport, it was 9:22. I parked in the short-term lot and sprinted across the terminal like a maniac, bumping into people, dropping my phone once, breathing like I'd just finished a marathon. When I reached the check-in counter, the lady behind the desk looked at me with that polite but painfully unbothered expression. "I'm sorry, sir. The gate has already closed." And that was it. I stood there, sweating, heart pounding, hands on my knees, trying to process what just happened. The flight was gone. And with it, the meeting, the reunion with my friend, and my perfectly planned day. I walked over to a bench and sat down. I wasn't even angry at first. I was just numb. Then the emotions started to rise. I felt stupid. I felt like a failure. How could I mess this up? I blamed the alarm, the traffic, myself. I thought about rescheduling, catching the next flight, calling my friend, making excuses. But for a moment, I just sat there and stared. Across from where I was sitting, there was a travel board showing train routes, and one name caught my eye: Queenscliff. Now, I'd heard about Queenscliff before, a small coastal town about 2 hours away by train. People said it was beautiful, quiet, artistic. I had never been there. And in that moment of frustration and disappointment, something strange happened. I stood up, walked to the counter, and instead of booking another flight, I bought a train ticket to Queenscliff. I can't explain why. Maybe it was an impulse. Maybe it was a way of escaping the failure I felt. But in that moment, I needed a change of scenery. I needed space. And that little town by the sea sounded like exactly the kind of place that wouldn't ask questions. The train ride was slow but peaceful. I had a window seat. The world outside was green and open, dotted with small homes, trees swaying in the wind, and the occasional group of cows staring blankly at the train as it passed. It was the first time that day I actually slowed down and breathed. When I arrived in Queenscliff, the air was different, fresher, lighter. The town felt like a postcard. Colorful little shops lined the streets, people walked slowly, and the sound of the ocean was always in the background, like a soft rhythm guiding everything around it. I walked with no real destination. I found a small coffee shop called Claire's Corner, with a hand-painted sign and wooden chairs on the sidewalk. I stepped in and was greeted by a woman probably in her late 60s. She smiled and said, "You look like you've had a morning." I laughed, maybe for the first time that day. I ordered a cappuccino, and she sat down at the next table while wiping her hands on a cloth. Her name was Claire, and she had owned the shop for over 20 years. She told me stories about the town, about the lighthouse, the fishermen, the music festival happening that evening, and how she still sends postcards instead of emails. Her voice was calm and steady, like someone who had mastered the art of living slowly. We talked for nearly an hour about travel, about missed chances, about how sometimes the world tells you to pause and you have to listen. That evening, I went to the local festival Claire had mentioned. It was small, nothing like the events in the city, but it had charm. There were fairy lights hanging across trees, families sitting on blankets, kids running barefoot, and a small stage where local bands played folk music. I sat on the grass, holding a meat pie in one hand and a cider in the other, watching strangers dance like nobody was watching. At one point, I looked around and thought, this is the best thing that's happened to me in weeks. I missed a flight. I lost a meeting, but I found something else, something unexpected. I found presence. I found stillness. I found people who reminded me that life doesn't always follow our schedule, and that's okay. That night, I stayed at a local inn. No TV, just a small room with an old bed, a lamp, and a window facing the ocean. I left the window open and fell asleep to the sound of waves. The next morning, I woke up with no alarm, just the light of the sun and the smell of coffee drifting in from downstairs. Claire had made breakfast for her guests, toast with local jam, eggs, and the best coffee I've had in years. We sat on the porch, drinking coffee in silence for a few minutes before she said, "Sometimes the train knows where to take you better than you do." And she was right. When I finally returned to Melbourne the next day, I wasn't behind on anything. The meeting had been rescheduled, my friend was still in Sydney, and life went on. But something had shifted in me. Now, whenever I miss something, a bus, a call, an opportunity, I remember that day in Queenscliff. I remember how a mistake turned into magic, how a disaster became a discovery, and how letting go led me exactly where I needed to be. So next time something doesn't go as planned, ask yourself, what if this is leading me somewhere better? because for me, it did. And honestly, I'd miss that flight again.
All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and feel free to leave a comment telling us what kind of topics you'd like to see covered here on the channel. Thank you so much, and see you in the next video.